Brazil's president kicks off his campaign for re-election. But even before a single vote has been cast, Jair Bolsonaro is crying foul. Could his claims trigger an electoral crisis? I'm Jafar Hasnan, and today's newsmaker is Brazil's upcoming election. Jair Bolsonaro is known by some as the Trump of the tropics. And just like the former US president, Brazil's controversial leader has concerns about his country's election system. And he has not been afraid to let the world know about it.
What
I want the most with the elections is transparency, because we want the winner to be the one that was voted for. We have an electoral system that only 2 countries in the world use. In the past, some countries tried to use that system, but they quickly abandoned it.
So, what exactly are Bolsonaro's concerns? Despite winning the last election, the Brazilian president still believes the country's electronic voting system is unreliable and open to the risk of fraud. Most have outright rejected his claims. The TSE, which oversees elections in the country, slammed Bolsonaro, calling his allegations unacceptable.
There is unacceptable electoral denialism on the part of an important public figure within a democratic country, and the accusation of fraud in bad faith against an institution without presenting any evidence.
Now, the fact the Brazilian president is making these claims even before a single vote has been cast is a cause of concern for many. There is a fear that should Bolsonaro lose the election, he may try to discredit the result. The polls right now do not look too good for Brazil's president. One survey found he's about 19 points behind his closest rival, Lula da Silva. The former left-wing leader was officially nominated by the Workers' Party last week. And in a speech to thousands of supporters, he said it was time to humanize the country again and ensure Bolsonaro is beaten at the polls in October.
We need to win the elections in Rio de Janeiro. We need to be prepared for the fake news. We must not believe in the lies.
And joining me now from Boston is Bolsonaro supporter and Chief Executive Officer of the Caesar Group Incorporated, Julio Morais. From Sao Paulo is Gustavo Riberio, the founder of the Brazilian Report. And from Washington, D.C. is Elcior Santana, an adjunct professor at the Center for Latin American Studies at Georgetown University. Thanks all for being with us today here on The Newsmakers. The elections are still a few months away, but the Brazilian president, Jair Bolsonaro, has already started to cry foul. He says the voting system is flawed. So tell me, Julio, are his claims justified?
I think at some point, yes, and especially when you have a candidate, Lula has a candidate in election, and to be more worried about, to get more the attention, the current president of the Electoral Justice is a former member of the Labour Party and also appointee of the Labour Party. So I think what the president trying to do right now, send a message for the future, because in case we get a contest, he already have a claim on. We see the polls, and now the polls show Lula with a large march ahead of the president. But when the supporter go out on the street, you see the President Bolsonaro supporter more than the Labour Party. The polls in Brazil are very questioning. Yesterday, the Global News published a poll which showed Lula with a large march ahead of the Jair Bolsonaro. But at the end, they showed the numbers of the interview. It was 935 people. 935 people dictated how over 11 million voters should vote. That's the wrong thing, the wrong message the Global News.
Okay, if I may interject, so as I understand, you are saying that the polls are wrong. But I'm talking about the election system, which Jair Bolsonaro says is flawed. Is it?
Well, that's the question we have right now. That's what we need to see right now. What I see right now is the Brazilian media try to influence how the Brazilian vote should vote. I think a poll with 935 should not be published in nationwide television to dictate who's ahead of the election right now.
Okay, but you still haven't answered my question. Do you think the claims of Jair Bolsonaro are justified?
I think he has a lot to prove us right now, and that's why I think the message it is.
Okay. Gustavo, let me come to you. I mean, the president says that the system is flawed, but he has not really provided any evidence. In fact, the body which oversees the elections in the country has also said that his claims are unfounded. So what do you make of that?
I mean, it's not just that Bolsonaro has not provided any evidence. He has said verbatim that he has no evidence of his claims. What he's trying to do is muddy the waters because, as Julio said, the polls show that Lula is miles ahead of Bolsonaro, and if the elections were today, he could even pull off a first-round landslide. So what Bolsonaro is trying to do is to sow distrust in the voting system in order to convulse the electoral process, but we have used this system for almost 40 years, and the system has never faced credible fraud allegations. The last voter fraud problems we had were with printed ballots in 1994. This is a system that Bolsonaro is saying doesn't work, but which has allowed him to win congressional elections time and time again, and which allowed him to win the presidential election in 2018 with 55 million votes. So, I mean, if the system were rigged against him, how would he be able to win by the large margin he did 4 years ago?
Okay. Now, Elcior, according to Gustavo, Jair Bolsonaro is basically trying to spread distrust in the system because he knows that his popularity is going down. What do you make of it?
Well, in 2018, I gave an interview to your television channel saying three things. That Bolsonaro, what you see is not what you get. The idea that the pact that the private sector had done with the devil would backfire because of instability, and that because Bolsonaro could not really govern, he will be managing crisis after crisis. He'll be creating crisis. What's happening now is exactly the same thing. Bolsonaro cannot really face the election in the sense that he's not prepared to face a debate or to have a program that could convince people. His first term has been a disaster in all levels, and even his supporters have disappeared, basically. So what he's trying to do is to create another crisis and trying to prevent or anticipate the result that he'll face. I mean, it's the old trick of saying that, the election was stolen. I mean, he's not creating anything new, but the countries have had similar experiences.
Okay, so tell me, is he likely to succeed in doing so? Because he says, on the one hand, that the military is on his side. So assuming Bolsonaro loses the upcoming election, is it likely for the military to interfere?
I don't think so. He's bluffing. Why do I say so? Because the military stepped in. There would have to be, first of all, a combination of support, domestic and international support. And even within the armed forces, there have been several high-ranking officials that have disagree with the insinuations that Bolsonaro has made about the armed force. What now? Bolsonaro is also playing the card of the militia. That's one point that might be a problem, but it will be an isolated problem. The issue with the militaries is that now the militaries have 80,000 or 6,000 people participating in the government. Bolsonaro has adjusted the wages in the military sector high farther than he did in any other sector. So there will be some negotiation. So the militaries will not feel that they have lost everything.
Okay.
But I don't see how.
And Elcior,
Sure,
can I step
Gustavo,
in
go
just? Yeah, I would add, besides the military, besides the armed forces, the military police forces, which are state police forces, they are also a source of instability in Brazil because we have seen thousands of police strikes which are illegal since 1997. There's a mood for insubordination. We have Bolsonaro has tried to cater to police forces over the course of his administration and incite a sort of rebellion sentiment within these forces. So if he tries to overthrow the election or a power grab or of any sort, there's also, by a lot of political, according to a lot of political observers, fears that part, of course not all, of these police forces could try to join him in any sort of way. These are forces that have been aligned with the federal government for quite some time.
Okay. Julio, I would like to come to you now. According to most of the polls, Bolsonaro's popularity in the country is declining. I want to analyze with you, why is that happening? Is it because President Jair Bolsonaro mishandled the coronavirus pandemic, or is there something else to it?
I don't think it's the corona, because the post-corona, it's happening worldwide. So you see inflation here in U.S., in Brazil as well. Like Elcior said, he was able to govern the way he said he was doing during the campaign, because the last 2 years he has to deal with the pandemic. That's something.
No, because the opponents of Jair Bolsonaro say that he mishandled the pandemic. Brazil has the second highest death toll anywhere in the world when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes. Well, the third one, I think U.S. is the first one, and India is the second one, and Brazil the third one. But look at the popularity of Brazil. We talk about what? Less than 2% got COVID, died. I lost a family from COVID. It's unfortunate, but it's something that he couldn't stop it. He couldn't do a better job. I agree with that. But he was worried about the economy right now. There was a campaign at the beginning, stay home, the economy, we check later. Now we're checking later and everyone's complaining about it. The economy, the inflation, the high cost of price and everything. That's something that he prepared before. That's why he was against a lockdown. Okay. He wants the country to continue to run. So I think telling him that he's misled the country on the corona, I don't think it's fair.
No, Gustavo, I'm really sorry. My condolences that you lost your family member due to the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. But frankly speaking, can you really justify when the president said that COVID-19 is just like a little flu? And I still remember he said that we are all going to die anyway. He was basically misleading the public of Brazil, wasn't he?
Was not, because think about that. I got COVID 4 times and I'm fine. My entire family. I have
no, this is not the flu. Julio, I respect your opinion, but here on the Newsmakers, this is something that I will not condone. COVID-19 is not the flu.
But then we have people that got 4, 5, 6 times and was fine. Jill has the flu. Other people that couldn't, survive the COVID.
So I know you were trying hard to defend what Jair Bolsonaro said during those days, but COVID is not the flu.
COVID is not a flu, exactly. But we have other diseases that kills more. We have influenza, we have tuberculosis, we have
I'm sorry, that's inaccurate. And this is not a debate about COVID-19. This is not a debate about coronavirus. I would rather have doctors comment on whether or not COVID-19 is more or less lethal than influenza. Sorry about that. Let's move forward. You mentioned the economy. Now, let me put this to Gustavo. Gustavo, did he really handle the economy well?
I would say no, because the government has tried to come up with short-term solutions, short-term fixes to Brazil's economic problems, such as the loss of purchasing power. The government has obliterated the federal spending cap over this past year in order to allow the president to generate some feel-good factors for the economy, the government has made some important measures, but through means that are highly debated by economists. Now, the thing is, the government has recently approved a bill to jack up social spending. This could give Bolsonaro a popularity boost, because the thing is, with Brazil being a country as unequal, with a poverty rate as big as we have, economic feelings about the economy go hand in hand with how voters perceive the federal government. Even if not all problems are the entire fault of the federal government, and not all good things about the economy are the merits of the federal government. But if you look at the trend lines of economic expectations and approval ratings for the government, they go really hand in hand. One is proxy for the other.
Okay. Now, Elcior, the other candidate in the upcoming elections is Lula da Silva. Now, he is no stranger to power. He served as the president of Brazil not long ago. Is he the right person to bring Brazil's economy back on track?
I think so. And by the way, I don't see any alternative. Some people have tried to create a third alternative, but that has not really stick. I think Lula has the experience and has the team and has now a coalition that will provide him with the possibility of governing a program that's not, it's a compromise between what the PT would like to do, the PT hardcore would like to do, and some new friends or some partners. His alliance with Alckmin means that he will be taking into consideration some issues that were important. The fact that Pércio Arida has been talking to Aloysio Mercadante, those are two extremely competent and serious people. I think that I don't see anybody else able to do the job that needs to be done in the next years.
Okay. Julio, let me come back to you. Now, as I understand, you are a supporter of President Jair Bolsonaro. In case Lula da Silva wins the next election, would you, as a supporter of Jair Bolsonaro, accept the results?
I would. No doubt about it.
Okay.
I would.
And do you expect your president, the current president, to do the same?
I don't think so. He's been very radical regarding the post-election. Like I said, like if you know, like we have the pre-election situation with the polls and a lot of things. Let's remember 2018, Haddad was ahead of the election, and he ended up losing for Jair Bolsonaro. There's a couple of examples of giving about the election, the pre-election system. But if Lula get elected, I will support him. I will stand behind him, because he will be the president for the entire Brazilians, not only for the Labour Party.
Okay. Gustavo, let me come to you. I want to focus on the bigger picture right now. Especially, I want to focus on the United States. Which candidate do you think is likely to be backed by the current U.S. government? I think the answer is obvious if President Donald Trump were in power. But who do you think the current U.S. government is going to back most likely?
I would say Lula, because Lula is a more predictable leader. You kind of he works within the codes of diplomacy, within the codes of the international system, and Bolsonaro has not done that. Also because issues that are becoming a priority in the world agenda, like climate change, is something that Bolsonaro has been sort of outcast. He has overseen a rampage of the Amazon rainforest. He has lifted environmental controls. This has been an agenda that even if Biden has not necessarily carried out, he
But if
has
I may interject, Gustavo, leftist
Sure.
leaders don't go quite well with the U.S., especially in Latin America, do they?
Well, Lula is a pragmatic person, right? And he had a very good relationship with George W. Bush. Relations between Brazil and the U.S., they have never been quite so close, never so cold. It's always, Brazil has historically kept the U.S. At a sort of arm's length because of trying to assert its influence in South America. But relations traditionally go as good as the interpersonal relationships between presidents go. So, for instance, Clinton and Fernando Henrique Cardoso, who was a center-right leader, they had a much less tight relationship than Bush and Lula being a left-wing person.
Elcior, now you are in Washington, D.C. I would love to get your thoughts on this.
I think that Brazil will be back in the international scene, let's say, regionally and globally. The way that the PT is describing the new phase of its diplomatic approach seems to be taking into consideration the need to reposition the country regionally in terms of South America, but also globally. And I think that the US will welcome that, although those countries have similar interests and different interests. So there will be always a sort of an element of tension, and to which the US is not used to. And Brazil does have some ambitions in terms of international diplomacy. I would say that those ambitions, or at least some of them, are legitimate. And both countries have a lot to gain by working together. Usually when Brazil and the US work together on some issues, it moves forward. When they disagree and are not able to work on it, the issue usually collapses or gets stagnant. So I think the two countries can work together and tend to work together if Lula is the new president.
Okay, if Lula is the new president, let me pick up on that. Whether or not he will become the new president, well, the Brazilian public will decide. But since we are in the dying minutes of the program, let me actually ask each of you, who do you think is going to be the likely winner of Brazil's upcoming election? Julio, let me begin with you, very quickly though.
Jair Bolsonaro. I think he won his election. It's going to be like 2018. We'll show something else, but at the end of the day, the people are going to go vote and going to decide.
Okay. And Gustavo?
I would say Lula, but I would raise the concern that political violence in Brazil has enhanced in recent months. So I would be fearful for any sort of violent episode during this election. If everything goes according to normalcy, Lula.
Okay. Elcior?
Yes, 2018, let's remember, there was a fact, there was a sort of, somebody tried to stab Bolsonaro. At least that's the narrative that some people question, but anyway. And that fact was actually helped a lot Bolsonaro to get elected. He didn't have to debate, he was in the media all the time, and so on. I don't see anything like that happening, although it's true that violence is being rising at the point that there was a guy from the PT who got killed in the south, and we could have more of that. Like I said, Bolsonaro tries to create crisis in order to move ahead. he will continue to do that.
So you, just want to make sure I get this right. So according to you, Lula is likely to win in the next election, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And Bolsonaro will try a couple of tricks, but I don't see any other result possible.
All right. It's such an important topic. It requires a longer debate, but unfortunately, we are out of time. Julio Morais, Gustavo Riberio, Elcior Santana. Thanks all very much for talking to us here on The Newsmakers today, and thank you for watching. You can follow us on Twitter at @the_newsmakers, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Jafar Hasnan. See you next time.